Clara. May Whitmore's hands trembled as the auctioneer grabbed her arm and shoved her onto the wooden platform. 19 years old, and she was about to be sold like livestock to pay her dead father's debts. The winter wind cut through her thin dress, but it was the eyes of the men below that made her blood run cold. Hungry eyes. Cruel eyes. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. She broke that promise before the bidding even started. If you want to know how this broken girl found a family in the most unexpected place, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Clara's tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. The auctioneer's grip bruised her arm as he yanked her forward, and she stumbled on the platform's edge. Laughter rippled through the crowd below. 30, maybe 40 men, their breath clouding in the December air, their eyes crawling over her like she was a mare at market. "Lot number 7, the auctioneer bellowed. "Clara May Whitmore, 19 years of age. Strong back, good teeth, can read and write. Sold to settle the outstanding debts of one William Whitmore, deceased." Deceased. Her father had been dead for 3 weeks, and that word still hit her like a fist to the chest. Starting bid $50. Clara forced her chin up. She would not cower. She would not beg. Whatever happened next, she would face it standing. 50. A man in the front row raised his hand. He was missing 2 fingers and most of his teeth. 60. Another voice thick with whiskey. 75. The numbers climbed. Clara kept her eyes fixed on the gray sky above the crowd, counting her heartbeats, trying not to think about what these men wanted from her. $100. The voice cut through the others, sharp and eager. Clara's gaze dropped before she could stop herself. Silas Cutter stood at the edge of the crowd, his black coat pristine against the muddy street. Owner of the Golden Spur Saloon. The man who'd held her father's gambling debts. The man who'd suggested 3 days after the funeral that Clara could work off what was owed in his upstairs rooms. She'd slapped him. Now he smiled at her, slow and sure, like a cat watching a trapped mouse. $100, the auctioneer repeated. Do I hear 125? Silence. Silas's smile widened. Going once. Clara's stomach lurched. She'd rather die. She'd rather $200. The new voice came from the back of the crowd. Low, quiet, almost reluctant. Silas spun around. Who said that? A man stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat dusted with snow and a hat pulled low over his face. He moved through the crowd like he owned the ground beneath his feet, and men parted for him without being asked. I did. He stopped 10 feet from the platform. 200. Clara couldn't see his face clearly, but she could see his hands. Scarred, calloused, working hands. Silas laughed, but there was an edge to it. Well, well, Josiah Brennan. Didn't expect to see you at a bride auction. Thought you were done with women after Annabeth. The tall man, Brennan, didn't react. 200, he repeated to the auctioneer. You heard me. I heard 300, Silas countered, turning back to face the platform. From me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. $300 was more than most men made in 4 months. Brennan's jaw tightened. 350. 400. Silas didn't hesitate. Clara watched the 2 men face each other, and something cold settled in her chest. This wasn't about her. This was about them. She was just the battleground. 450, Brennan said. Silas's eyes narrowed. He studied Brennan for a long moment, then turned to look at Clara. Really looked for the first time. What do you want with her, Brennan? Word is your kids run off every woman who sets foot on your ranch. 3 housekeepers in 2 years. You think this skinny little thing's gonna last longer. That ain't your concern. Maybe I'm making it my concern. Silas took a step closer to the platform. Maybe I'm thinking this girl owes me something. Her daddy certainly did. Died owing me $600, and I don't take kindly to unpaid debts. Then take the $450 and call it settled. I don't want $450. Silas's voice dropped dangerous. I want her. The crowd had gone quiet. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, could feel every pair of eyes on her skin. Brennan was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. He tossed it to the auctioneer, who caught it with both hands. $500, Brennan said. Cash. Count it if you want. The auctioneer's eyes went wide. He fumbled with the pouch, spilling coins into his palm. That's... He swallowed hard. That's $500, all right. Silas's face twisted. You're a fool, Brennan. Spending half a year's wages on some debtor's daughter? She ain't worth it. Reckon that's for me to decide. Brennan finally looked up at Clara, and she caught a glimpse of his face beneath the hat's brim. Weathered skin, dark eyes, a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. You done bidding Cutter, or you want to keep wasting both our time? Silas's hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, Clara thought he might go for the gun at his hip. Then he smiled. That slow, terrible smile. Fine, take her. He stepped back, spreading his hands. But you remember this, Brennan. You remember that I let you have her. Because when she runs, and she will run, I'll be waiting. And next time, you won't be there to outbid me. He turned and walked away, his boots crunching in the frozen mud. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Sold, to Mr. Josiah Brennan for $500. Clara's knees gave out. She caught herself on the platform's railing, her fingers white-knuckled on the rough wood. $500. This stranger had just paid $500 for her, and she didn't know if that made him her savior or just a different kind of danger. Miss? She looked up. Brennan stood at the base of the platform, one hand extended. Wagons this way. We got a long ride. Clara stared at his hand. Scarred, calloused, steady. She took it. His grip was firm, but not cruel, and he helped her down from the platform without a word. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair. Older than her by nearly 20 years, maybe more. Can you ride? He asked. Yes, sir. Good. Snow's coming in hard tonight. Need to get home before it hits. He led her through the crowd, and Clara felt the stares like brands on her back. Some pitying, some curious, some angry men who'd wanted to bid but couldn't match the price. The wagon waited at the edge of town, hitched to two sturdy horses with thick winter coats. An old man sat in the back, dark-skinned and gray-haired, wrapped in a heavy blanket. This her? He asked, his voice like gravel. This is her. Miss Whitmore, this is Ezekiel. Zeke, he's been with me since I started the ranch. Zeke studied her with eyes that had seen too much. You look half-frozen, girl. There's a blanket under the seat. Clara found the blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. The wool was rough but warm, and she had to fight back tears at such a simple kindness. Brennan climbed onto the wagon bench and took up the reins. He glanced at her waiting. She climbed up beside him. Get up, he said to the horses, and the wagon lurched forward. Copper Creek fell away behind them, and Clara watched it disappear with nothing in her heart but relief. That town had taken everything from her. Her father, her home, her dignity. Whatever waited ahead couldn't be worse. They rode in silence for nearly an hour. The landscape shifted from frozen mud to rolling hills, from bare trees to snow-dusted pines. The wind picked up sharp and bitter, and Clara huddled deeper into the blanket. I got 2 children. Brennan's voice startled her. She'd begun to think he didn't talk at all. Twins, he continued, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Boy and a girl, 6 years old. Their mother passed 2 years back. I'm sorry, Clara said, because it seemed like the thing to say. Fever took her. Nothing the doctor could do. His jaw tightened. Since then I've had 3 housekeepers. None of them lasted more than a few months. Why not? He was quiet for a moment. My children ran them off. Emmy and Tommy don't take well to strangers coming in trying to be something they ain't. Clara's stomach sank. So that was why the $500. Why no one else had wanted the job badly enough to outbid Silas. I ain't asking you to be their mother, Brennan said like he could read her thoughts. I'm asking you to cook, clean, mind the house, that's all. And if they run me off too, then I reckon I'll be looking for a fourth housekeeper. He glanced at her, and something flickered in his dark eyes. But I'm hoping you're made of sterner stuff than the others. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The wagon crested a hill, and below them a ranch sprawled across the valley. A large wooden house with a wide porch, several barns, a corral full of horses, smoke rising from the chimney. It looked like a home. Clara pushed that thought away. It wasn't her home. She was here to work off a debt she hadn't made to care for children who didn't want her to survive until she could figure out what came next. Brennan brought the wagon to a stop near the house. Stay here, he said, climbing down. I'll get them. He walked to the porch and opened the door. Clara heard his voice muffled by distance calling names. Zeke shifted in the wagon bed behind her. Don't let them scare you off, girl. Clara looked back at him. The children. They're wild, hurt, angry at the whole world for taking their mama. His dark eyes held hers. But they ain't bad. They just need someone who won't run at the first sign of trouble. Before Clara could respond, the front door banged open. Two small figures came tumbling out onto the porch. A girl with tangled blonde hair and a blue dress that had seen better days. A boy with dark hair like his father's, and eyes that held the same guarded wariness. They stopped at the edge of the porch and stared at Clara. She stared back. Brennan stood behind them, one hand on each child's shoulder. This is Miss Whitmore. She's going to be staying with us. You'll treat her with respect. The girl Emmy crossed her arms. The last one said we were demons. The one before that cried, the boy Tommy added. His voice was flat matter-of-fact. Every night, we could hear her through the walls. That's enough, Brennan said. But Emmy wasn't finished. Are you going to cry, Miss Whitmore? Because if you're going to cry, you should just leave now. Save us all the trouble. Clara climbed down from the wagon. Her legs were stiff from the cold, and her thin dress offered no protection against the wind. She was tired, hungry, and her heart felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. But she'd be damned if she was going to let two 6-year-olds see her break. She walked to the base of the porch steps and looked up at the twins. I might cry, she said honestly. I cry sometimes when I'm sad or angry, but I won't cry because of you. I promise you that. The twins exchanged a glance. Some silent communication passed between them the way it does with children who've spent their whole lives together. You're skinny, Emmy observed. I am. Can you cook? Tommy demanded. Yes. Better than Mrs. Patterson because her biscuits were like rocks. Clara felt her mouth twitch. I reckon my biscuits are better than rocks. Tommy almost smiled. Almost. Can you tell stories? Emmy asked, and there was something almost hopeful in her voice. Good ones, not boring ones about Jesus and being good. Mama used to tell us stories about brave girls who saved themselves. Clara thought of her own mother dead so long ago she could barely remember her face, but she remembered the stories, always the stories. I know some good ones. Can you braid hair? Emmy reached up to touch her own tangled mess. Mine's all knotted because Papa doesn't know how and I can't reach the back. Yes, I can braid hair. Can you shoot? This from Tommy, more challenge than question. Clara hesitated. I can learn. Tommy nodded slowly. Pa says the same thing. He says if you're willing to learn, you can do just about anything. Your pa sounds like a smart man. He is. Tommy's chin lifted. Smartest man in the territory. And the strongest. So don't think you can get away with anything because he'll know. I don't plan on getting away with anything. Clara held his gaze steadily. I plan on doing my job. That's all. The twins stared at her for a long moment. Then Emmy nodded a sharp little jerk of her head. Fine. You can come inside. But you have to sleep in the room at the end of the hall. That was Mrs. Patterson's room, and she said it was drafty, but Mama's room is Papa's room now, and nobody else can have it. The drafty room is fine. And you can't sit in Mama's chair at supper. That's the one by the window. Tommy and I take turns sitting there now. I won't sit in your Mama's chair. Emmy studied her for another moment, then turned and marched back into the house. Tommy followed, pausing at the door to look back at Clara. She always says she won't cry, he said quietly. They all say that, but they always do. Then he was gone. Clara stood at the base of the steps, the wind cutting through her dress, her heart hammering against her ribs. Brennan came down the steps and stopped beside her. Well, he said, that went better than usual. That was better than usual. Mrs. Patterson ran back to the wagon before Emmy finished talking. He almost smiled. Almost. Come inside. I'll show you the kitchen. Supper needs making, and those two eat like they've never seen food before. Clara followed him up the steps and through the door. The house was dim and cold, with dust on most surfaces and dishes piled in the wash basin. But there was a fire burning in the stone fireplace, and the furniture looked handmade but sturdy. It smelled like wood smoke and coffee and something else. Something sad. The particular kind of emptiness that came from a house with too many memories and not enough people to fill it. Kitchen's through there, Brennan pointed. Pantry's stocked. Flour, salt, pork beans, some canned goods. Make whatever you can from it. He paused. The children like apple pie. Annabeth used to make it on Sundays. Annabeth was your wife. Yes. The word hung between them, heavy with everything he wasn't saying. Your room's upstairs. End of the hall, like Emmy said. There's water and towels. Get settled and come down when you're ready. He turned to leave. Mr. Brennan? He stopped, but didn't turn around. Why did you do it? Clara asked. $500. You could have let Silas Cutter have me. It would have been easier. Brennan was silent for a long moment. I knew your father, he finally said. Not well, but I knew him. He came out here once years ago looking for work, before the drinking got bad. He turned his head just enough that she could see his profile against the firelight. He talked about his daughter, said you were the smartest girl in 3 counties, said you could do anything you set your mind to. Clara's throat tightened. I don't know if that's true or not, Brennan continued. But I figure anyone who survived what you've survived, who stood on that platform without begging or crying or breaking, I figure that person deserves a chance. A real chance. He walked to the door. Don't make me regret it. Then he was gone. Clara stood alone in the empty room, her father's words echoing in her ears. The smartest girl in 3 counties. He'd said that about her, even when the drinking was bad, even when he couldn't remember to come home at night. He talked about her like she was something precious. She pressed her hand to her mouth and let herself cry. Just for a moment. Just long enough to let out some of the grief and fear and confusion that had been building since the day her father died. Then she wiped her face, squared her shoulders, and walked into the kitchen. There was supper to make. The kitchen was a disaster. Dishes were stacked in the wash basin, some with food crusted on them that had to be days old. The stovetop was covered in grease and ash. The floor hadn't been swept in what looked like weeks. Clara stood in the doorway and felt something spark in her chest. Not hope exactly. More like purpose. She could fix this. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. 3 hours later, the kitchen was clean. The dishes were washed and dried. The stovetop scrubbed, the floor swept. A pot of stew bubbled on the stove made from salt pork and potatoes, and the last of the onions she'd found in the pantry. It wasn't much, but it was hot and filling, and when she called the family to supper, even the twins looked impressed. It doesn't smell like smoke, Emmy observed, sliding into her chair. That's because I didn't burn it. Mrs. Patterson burned everything, Tommy said. Even water. How do you burn water? I don't know, but she managed. Clara ladled stew into bowls and set them on the table. Brennan came in from outside, stamping snow off his boots, and stopped when he saw the kitchen. You cleaned, he said. I did. The last three couldn't manage to clean and cook in the same day. I'm not the last three. Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe, or something like respect. He sat down at the head of the table, and Clara hesitated, looking at the empty chairs. There. Emmy pointed to the seat farthest from the window. That one's for you. It's the coldest seat because it's closest to the door, but you're new, so you have to take it. That seems fair? Clara sat down and waited while the others started eating. The twins attacked their bowls like they'd been starving, and even Brennan ate steadily, his eyes fixed on his food. It's good, he said finally. The stew. It's just salt pork and potatoes. Mrs. Patterson's salt pork tasted like boot leather. This doesn't. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and ate. Supper passed in near silence. The twins finished first and started to push back from the table. Dishes, Brennan said without looking up. But Pa, dishes, then bed. Emmy and Tommy exchanged a look, but gathered their bowls and carried them to the wash basin. They washed them sloppily, water splashing everywhere, and left them in a haphazard pile. Good night, Miss Whitmore, Emmy said, her tone making it clear this was a formality and nothing more. We'll see if you're still here in the morning, Tommy added. Then they thundered up the stairs, and Clara heard a door slam. She started to rise to clean up after them, but Brennan held up a hand. Leave it. The dishes can wait. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her. Really looked for the first time since the auction. You did well today. I cleaned a kitchen and made stew. It's not exactly heroic. You didn't run. You didn't cry. You didn't let them see you scared. He paused. That's more than the others managed. Clara twisted her hands in her lap. Can I ask you something, Mr. Brennan? Depends on what it is. That man, Silas Cutter, he said he'd be waiting. When I run. She met his eyes. What did he mean? Brennan's expression hardened. Silas Cutter is a snake in a fancy coat. He runs the saloon in town, but that ain't where his real money comes from. He loans money to desperate men at rates that'd make the devil blush, and when they can't pay, he takes whatever they've got. Land, livestock, daughters. Clara's stomach turned. He said my father owed him $600. Probably true. Your father had a weakness for cards, and Silas's dealers know how to take advantage of a man's weakness. Brennan's hands clenched on the table. He wanted you because you slapped him, because you embarrassed him in front of his men. Men like Silas don't forget that. So he'll come after me. He'll try. Brennan's voice was flat, certain. But he won't get you. Not while you're under my roof. Why? The question burst out before Clara could stop it. Why do you care? I'm just the housekeeper. I'm just... You're a person. Brennan cut her off. A young woman who got dealt a bad hand through no fault of her own. And I ain't the kind of man who stands by while someone like Silas Cutter takes what he wants. Clara didn't know what to say. No one had stood up for her in a long time. Not since her father's drinking got bad. Not since she'd had to learn to stand up for herself because there was no one else. Thank you, she said finally. For today. For the $500. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Brennan pushed back from the table and stood. Those two upstairs are going to test you every single day. They're going to push you and challenge you and do everything they can think of to make you leave. Because that's what they do. That's how they protect themselves. Protect themselves from what? From getting attached. His voice softened just slightly. From loving someone and losing them. They already lost one mother. They ain't about to let themselves love another woman who might leave. Clara thought about the twins' guarded eyes, their sharp words, their fierce defiance. She thought about her own mother dead so long ago she was barely a memory. "I understand," she said quietly. "I hope you do." Brennan walked to the door, then paused. "Get some sleep, Miss Whitmore. Tomorrow's going to be harder." He disappeared into the darkness, and Clara heard his boots on the porch, then the creak of the rocking chair outside. She sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the wind howl outside and the fire crackle in the hearth. Tomorrow would be harder, but she'd survive today. That was something. Clara's room was small, cold, and drafty, just like Emmy had warned. But someone had left a quilt on the bed, heavy and worn and soft. She wrapped herself in it and lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of this strange house. The wind rattling the windows, the creak of old wood settling, the distant low of cattle in the barns, and somewhere down the hall, muffled crying. Clara sat up. The crying continued, soft and broken, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. She crept out of bed and padded down the hall in her bare feet. The sound was coming from behind a door at the far end, the twins' room. Clara hesitated, her hand raised to knock. "I want Mama." Emmy's voice thick with tears. "I want Mama back, Tommy." "Mama's dead." Tommy's voice was flat hard. "She's not coming back. We have to stop wanting her." "I can't." "You have to. Crying doesn't help. It just makes Papa sad." Clara's heart cracked right down the middle. She lowered her hand and stepped back, pressing herself against the wall. These children weren't monsters. They weren't demons. They were two broken little hearts trying to survive in a world that had already taken too much from them. She went back to her room and lay in the darkness, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Tomorrow, she would be stronger. Tomorrow, she would begin the work of earning their trust, of showing them that not everyone left, that not everyone disappeared. But tonight, she would let herself grieve for them, for all of them. Dawn came gray and cold. Clara was up before the sun, building up the fire, starting coffee, mixing biscuit dough, with hands that moved from memory. By the time Brennan came in from the morning chores, she had breakfast on the table and the kitchen warm. He stopped in the doorway, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "You're still here." "I'm still here." He almost smiled. "Biscuits smell good." "Better than rocks, I hope." This time he did smile. Just barely, just for a moment. But it was something. The twins came down 10 minutes later, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Emmy's hair was a tangled disaster. Tommy had buttoned his shirt wrong. Clara said nothing about the crying she'd heard in the night. She just set plates in front of them and watched them eat. "Miss Whitmore," Emmy said around a mouthful of biscuit. "Yes." "These aren't terrible." From Emmy, Clara suspected that was high praise. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Emmy's eyes narrowed. "We haven't started testing you for real." "I look forward to it." The twins exchanged a glance, that silent communication Clara was beginning to recognize. "She's strange," Tommy said. "Very strange." Emmy agreed. But neither of them looked quite as hostile as they had the day before. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The first week nearly broke her. Clara woke before dawn every morning, built the fires made, breakfast cleaned, dishes swept floors, washed clothes, mended shirts, cooked supper, and fell into bed so exhausted she couldn't dream. But the work wasn't the hard part. The twins were the hard part. On the second day, Clara opened her dresser drawer and found a dead mouse inside, carefully placed on top of her spare dress. She didn't scream. She picked up the mouse by its tail, carried it downstairs, and set it on the breakfast table in front of Tommy. "I believe this belongs to you." Tommy's eyes went wide. "I didn't." "Don't lie to me." Clara kept her voice calm. "If you want to test me, but don't insult us both by pretending you didn't do it." Tommy stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the mouse and walked outside without a word. Emmy watched from across the table, her expression unreadable. He's going to try harder now. I expect he will. You're not scared. Of a dead mouse, no. What are you scared of? Clara thought about that. Failing, she said finally. I'm scared of failing. Emmy nodded slowly like this was an acceptable answer. Mama was scared of snakes. She used to scream whenever she saw one. Papa had to kill them all. I'm not scared of snakes either. What about spiders? No. What about Emmy? Clara leaned forward. I grew up poor. I've seen things that would curl your hair. A few pranks aren't going to send me running. Emmy's mouth twitched. We'll see. On the third day, Clara's shoes disappeared. She searched everywhere under her bed, in the closet behind the dresser. Nothing. She went downstairs in her bare feet, the wooden floors cold as ice, and found the twins eating breakfast like nothing had happened. Have either of you seen my shoes? No, ma'am, they said in unison, their faces perfectly innocent. Clara looked at them. They looked back. All right, she said. I suppose I'll just work barefoot today. Hope I don't step on any nails or broken glass. She turned and walked toward the kitchen. Wait. Tommy's voice stopped her. They're in the chicken coop. Thank you. She retrieved her shoes covered in chicken droppings and cleaned them without complaint. When she came back inside, Tommy was watching her with something that might have been respect. Mrs. Patterson would have cried, he said. I'm not Mrs. Patterson. On the fourth day, someone put salt in the sugar bowl. Clara discovered this when she tasted the biscuit dough and nearly gagged. She dumped the ruined batch, checked every container in the pantry, found the sugar hidden behind the flour sacks, and started over. When she served breakfast, she set a separate plate of biscuits in front of Emmy. These are the special ones, she said, made with extra salt, just for you. Emmy went pale. I don't want... Eat them. But you made them. You eat them. Emmy looked at her father, who was watching with raised eyebrows. You heard her, Brennan said. Eat what you made. Emmy took one bite, grimaced, and set the biscuit down. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes, ma'am. I won't do it again. Good. Clara switched Emmy's plate with a normal one. Now eat your breakfast. We've got work to do. Brennan caught her eye across the table. He didn't say anything, but the corner of his mouth lifted just slightly. That night, when Clara was washing dishes, he came into the kitchen. You handled that well, he said. Which part? The mouse, the shoes, or the salt? All of it. He leaned against the door frame. Most women would have given up by now. I'm not most women. I'm starting to see that. He walked away before she could respond, and Clara stood there with her hands in the wash water, her heart beating faster than it should. Stop it, she told herself. He's your employer, nothing more. But she couldn't quite make herself believe it. The second week brought new challenges. Clara was hanging laundry when a wagon came rolling up the road. A woman sat on the bench, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face set in lines of permanent disapproval. You must be the new one, the woman said, climbing down from the wagon. I'm Ruth McAllister. I was Annabeth's closest friend. Clara Whitmore, ma'am. Pleased to meet you. Ruth's eyes swept over her, missing nothing. You're young. 19, ma'am. Too young. Ruth walked past her toward the house. Where's Josiah? In the north pasture, I believe. He should be back. I know his schedule better than you do, girl. I've known that man for 15 years. Ruth paused at the door. Annabeth was like a daughter to me. Those children are like grandchildren. If you hurt them, if you hurt any of them, I will make your life very difficult. Do you understand? Clara met her gaze steadily. I understand, ma'am, but I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to help. We'll see about that. Ruth went inside, and Clara heard her greeting the twins with warmth that had been entirely absent from their conversation. Who's the old woman? Zeke appeared beside her, a bundle of firewood in his arms. Ruth McAllister. Zeke made a sound that might have been a laugh. Watch out for that one. She's got opinions about everything and ain't shy about sharing them. I noticed. She means well, just protective. Zeke shifted the firewood. Annabeth was a special woman. Ruth ain't ready to see anyone take her place. I'm not trying to take anyone's place. Zeke looked at her with those knowing old eyes. Maybe not, but that don't mean it won't happen anyway. He walked away, leaving Clara standing in the cold, with laundry freezing on the line, and questions she didn't want to answer. Ruth stayed for supper. She sat in the chair by the window, Annabeth's chair, and the twins didn't say a word about it. They climbed into her lap, fought for her attention, told her everything that had happened since her last visit. Clara served the food and stayed quiet. The stew is adequate, Ruth said, like she was granting a great favor. Thank you, ma'am. Annabeth's was better. She used rosemary from the garden. I'll remember that. Ruth's eyes narrowed. You're very agreeable, aren't you? Very eager to please. I'm trying to do my job, ma'am. Your job. Ruth set down her spoon. Is that what you call it, living in another woman's house, caring for another woman's children, cooking in another woman's kitchen? Ruth, Brennan's voice was sharp. That's enough. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Josiah. This girl shows up out of nowhere, bought at an auction like a... I said enough. The table went silent. The twins looked between the adults with wide eyes. Clara's face burned, but she kept her expression neutral. If you'll excuse me. She stood and gathered her plate. I have dishes to wash. She walked into the kitchen and stood at the wash basin, her hands shaking. Like a what? Like a slave. Like property. Like something less than human. She'd known what people would think. She'd known there would be whispers and judgment and contempt. But hearing it spoken out loud at the table where she'd worked so hard to prove herself Miss Whitmore. She spun around. Brennan stood in the doorway. I apologize for Ruth, he said quietly. She had no right to say that. She's not wrong. Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. I was bought at an auction. That's a fact. The circumstances of how you got here don't define who you are. Don't they? Clara turned back to the dishes. I'm the housekeeper who was purchased for $500. That's what people will always see. That's not what I see. She looked at him over her shoulder. What do you see, Mr. Brennan? He was quiet for a long moment. I see a young woman who's stronger than she knows, who faces down 2 wild children and a hostile old woman without flinching, who works harder than anyone I've ever hired. He paused. I see someone worth a lot more than $500. Clara's throat tightened. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes me think. She stopped herself. Never mind. Makes you think what? Nothing. She scrubbed at a plate that was already clean. You should get back to your guest. Brennan didn't move. Ruth will be gone in an hour. She'll come around eventually. She's just grieving. We're all grieving something, Mr. Brennan. Josiah. Clara looked at him. My name is Josiah. Joe, if you prefer. The children call me Papa or Pa, but Mr. Brennan was my father, and he's been dead for 20 years. I don't think it's appropriate for me to... I'm asking you to. His voice softened. Please. Clara swallowed hard. All right. Joe. He nodded once, something shifting in his expression. Good night, Clara. He said her name like it meant something, like she meant something. After he left, Clara stood in the kitchen for a long time, trying to remember how to breathe. The 3rd week, everything fell apart. It started with Emmy refusing to let Clara braid her hair. I don't want you to touch me, Emmy said, pulling away. You're not my mama. You'll never be my mama. I know that, Emmy. I'm not trying to be. Then stop acting like you are. Emmy's voice rose to a shriek. Stop cooking her recipes and cleaning her house and sitting in her kitchen like you belong here. You don't belong here. Nobody wants you here. Clara felt each word like a blow. Emmy, I hate you, Emmy screamed. I wish you'd never come. I wish Papa had let that mean man take you. She ran upstairs and slammed her door so hard the whole house shook. Clara stood frozen in the kitchen, her hands still holding the hairbrush, her heart in pieces on the floor. Tommy appeared in the doorway. He looked at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. She doesn't mean it, he said quietly. She's just scared. Scared of what? Scared of loving you. Tommy's voice was matter-of-fact. Because everyone she loves goes away. Then he turned and went upstairs to his sister, leaving Clara alone with the weight of a grief she hadn't earned and couldn't fix. That night, Clara wrote a letter. She sat at the small desk in her room, a candle flickering beside her, and tried to find the words to tell Joe that she was leaving. That she couldn't do this anymore. That she was hurting his children more than helping them. Dear Mr. Brennan, she wrote, then crossed it out. Dear Joe, I am writing to inform you that I must leave your employment. Your children deserve better than... She crumpled the paper and threw it across the room. What did they deserve? Another housekeeper who would run at the first hard word, another stranger who would abandon them. Clara pressed her hands to her face and let herself cry. She cried for Emmy, who was so scared of losing another mother that she pushed everyone away. She cried for Tommy, who'd learned to hide his feelings behind a wall of silence. She cried for Joe, who worked himself to exhaustion trying to hold his family together. She cried for Annabeth, who'd left behind so much love and so much pain. And she cried for herself. For the girl who'd stood on that auction platform and promised herself she wouldn't break. She was breaking now. A soft knock at her door made her freeze. Miss Whitmore. Emmy's voice small and scared. Can I come in? Clara wiped her face quickly. Yes. The door opened. Emmy stood there in her nightgown, her tangled hair falling around her face, her eyes red from crying. I heard you, Emmy whispered. Through the walls, like Mrs. Patterson. Clara's heart sank. Emmy, I'm sorry. Emmy's voice cracked. I didn't mean what I said. I don't hate you. She started crying. I just miss my mama so much, and you're here and you're nice, and what if I start loving you and then you die too? Clara opened her arms, and Emmy ran into them. She held the little girl while she sobbed, stroking her tangled hair, murmuring words that didn't mean anything and meant everything. I'm not going to die, Clara said softly. I'm not going anywhere. You promise? I promise. Mrs. Patterson promised too. Mrs. Patterson wasn't me. Clara pulled back and looked into Emmy's tear-stained face. I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But I'm not going to leave you. Not because of hard words or pranks or anything else. You're stuck with me, Emmy Brennan. For as long as your papa lets me stay. Emmy studied her with those two old eyes. Do you mean it? I mean it. Cross your heart. Cross my heart. Emmy sniffled. Can you braid my hair now? It's all knotted, and it hurts. Clara laughed a wet sound that was half sob. Yes, I can braid your hair. She worked the tangles out gently, carefully, while Emmy sat on her bed and told her about her mama. Mama had yellow hair like mine. Papa says I look just like her. She used to sing when she braided my hair. Do you know any songs? A few. Will you sing one? Clara hesitated. She hadn't sung since her father died. Music felt like something that belonged to a different life, a different girl. But Emmy was looking at her with such hope. So Clara sang, an old song her mother had taught her about a girl who crossed mountains and rivers to find her way home. Her voice was rough at first, unused, but it grew stronger as she went. When she finished, Emmy was asleep against her shoulder. Clara carried her back to her room and tucked her into bed. Tommy was awake, watching from his own bed. "You have a nice voice," he said. "Thank you." "Mama couldn't sing. She always said she sounded like a crow with a sore throat." Clara smiled. "She sounds like she was wonderful." "She was." Tommy paused. "You're not so bad either." From Tommy, that was practically a declaration of love. "Good night, Tommy." "Good night, Miss Clara." Miss Clara, not Miss Whitmore. It was the first time either of the twins had called her by her first name. Clara went back to her room and tore up the letter she'd been writing. She wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, everything changed. Clara came downstairs to find Joe sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of paper in his hands. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. "What is it?" she asked. He looked up at her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. "Silas Cutter," he said. "He's filed a claim with the territorial court. Says I obtained you through fraudulent means. Says your father's debt wasn't properly settled. He's demanding you be turned over to him to work off the remaining balance." Clara's blood went cold. "Can he do that?" "I don't know." Joe crumpled the paper in his fist. "But he's got lawyers and money and connections, and I've got a ranch that barely breaks even and a reputation for keeping to myself. What are we going to do?" "We." Joe looked at her strangely. "You said we." Clara stopped. She had said we. Like this was her fight too. Like she belonged here. Because she did. Somehow, despite everything she did. "We're going to fight," she said. "That's what we're going to do." "Clara." "No." She sat down across from him. "I'm not going to Silas Cutter. I'd rather die than let him touch me. So whatever we have to do, whatever it takes, we fight. Together." Joe stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his face, something that looked almost like wonder. "You really mean that?" "I really mean that." He reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was strong and warm and steady. "Then we fight together." The twins came downstairs and found them like that, sitting at the table, hands clasped, faces set with determination. "What's happening?" Emmy asked, her voice worried. "Papa, you look scary." Joe released Clara's hand and opened his arms. Both children climbed into his lap. "There's a bad man who wants to take Miss Clara away," he said quietly. "But I'm not going to let him. I promise you that." "The mean man from the auction." Tommy's face hardened. "The one with the black coat." "Yes. I'll kill him." Tommy's voice was flat serious. "If he tries to take her, I'll kill him." "No one's killing anyone." Joe hugged them tighter. "We're going to handle this the right way. With the law. But Papa, I know the law isn't always fair, but it's what we've got." He looked at Clara over the children's heads. "And we've got each other. That counts for something." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, it does." Ruth McAllister arrived that afternoon. She came in like a storm, her face thunderous, the legal notice clutched in her hand. "I heard about Silas Cutter's claim," she said, not bothering with greetings. "The whole town's talking about it." "Ruth," Joe started. "That snake. That miserable, conniving snake." Ruth threw the paper on the table. "I've known Silas Cutter for 20 years, and he's never done an honest thing in his life. He's not going to start now." Clara blinked. "You're angry on my behalf." Ruth turned to look at her, and her expression softened just slightly. "I was hard on you, girl. I know that. I was protecting my memories of Annabeth, but I've been watching you these past weeks, the way you handle those children, the way you work, the way you didn't run when any sensible woman would have." "I couldn't run. I had nowhere to go." "You had plenty of places to go. You just chose to stay." Ruth sat down heavily. "Annabeth would have liked you. She had a soft spot for strays and hard cases." "I'm not sure if that's a compliment." "It is." Ruth reached out and patted her hand. Now, let's figure out how to beat that son of a snake at his own game. They talked for hours. Ruth knew everyone in town knew their secrets and their debts and their loyalties. Joe knew the law at least enough to understand what they were up against. Clara knew Silas knew how he thought knew what he wanted. He doesn't care about the money, she said. He cares about winning, about proving no one can defy him. Then we need to make defying him cost him more than it's worth, Ruth said. How? Ruth smiled, and there was something fierce in it. By making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man Silas Cutter really is. That night, after Ruth left and the children were in bed, Clara found Joe on the porch. He was sitting in the rocking chair, staring out at the darkness, his face troubled. "You should go inside," he said without looking at her. "It's cold." "So should you." "I'm fine." "You're not." Clara sat down on the porch steps. "You're worried." "I'm always worried." "More than usual." Joe was quiet for a long moment. "If I lose this fight, you'll be gone. The children will lose you. I'll—" He stopped. "You'll what?" He didn't answer. "Joe." Clara stood and walked to him. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that these weeks have been the best of my life. Even with the dead mice and the salt and Emmy screaming that she hates me. Even with all of it." "That's a low bar." "Maybe. But it's true." She reached out and touched his shoulder. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You treated me like a person when I'd forgotten what that felt like. I won't forget that. No matter what happens." Joe looked up at her, and something raw and vulnerable flickered across his face. "Clara." "Yes." He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. "Never mind. Go get some sleep." "Joe, please." His voice was rough. "I can't not right now. Just go inside." Clara hesitated, but something in his expression told her not to push. "Good night, Joe." "Good night, Clara." She went inside, her heart full of questions and her mind full of fear. Whatever was coming, it was coming soon. And nothing would ever be the same. 3 days passed like a held breath. Clara worked, cooked, cleaned, pretended everything was normal, while the legal notice sat on Joe's desk like a coiled snake. The twins sensed the tension children always did, and clung to her more than usual. Emmy held her hand while she kneaded bread. Tommy followed her around the house, never more than a few feet away. "When's the bad man coming?" Tommy asked on the third morning. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Will Papa stop him?" Clara looked at the boy's fierce little face, so determined to be brave. "Your Papa will do everything he can." "What if everything isn't enough?" She didn't have an answer for that. Joe rode into town that afternoon to meet with the only lawyer in Copper Creek, a man named Whitfield who owed Ruth McAllister a favor. Clara watched him go, her heart in her throat. "He'll be back," Emmy said, appearing at her elbow. "Papa always comes back." "I know." "Mama went to town once and didn't come back. But that was different. She was sick. Papa's not sick." Clara pulled Emmy close. "Your Papa's the strongest man I know." "Stronger than the bad man." "Much stronger." Emmy nodded, satisfied. But Clara wasn't satisfied. She wasn't satisfied at all. Joe returned at dusk with a face like thunder. Clara met him at the door. "What happened?" "Whitfield says Cutter's got a case." Joe pushed past her into the house. "The auction paperwork was sloppy. There's a clause about settling debts in full, and technically $500 didn't cover everything your father owed. Cutter's claiming the remaining $112 gives him rights to you." $112? That's what he says. Clara's hands shook. "Then I'll pay it. I'll work. I'll save. He doesn't want the money, Clara. He wants you." Joe slammed his fist against the wall. "He's been planning this since the auction. Waiting. Watching. He knew about the clause all along." "What do we do?" "Whitfield's filing a counterclaim. arguing that I purchased you in good faith and that Cutter waived his rights by not objecting at the time. Joe's jaw was tight, but it could take months to work through the courts, and in the meantime what? Joe finally looked at her. There's going to be a hearing. Tomorrow. The territorial judge is passing through and Cutter requested an emergency session. Tomorrow. Cutter's got connections. He pulled strings. Clara sank into a chair. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours to prepare. Less than 24 hours before everything she'd built here could be torn away. I won't let him take you. Joe's voice was low, fierce. I swear to God, Clara, I won't let him take you. You might not have a choice. There's always a choice. He crouched in front of her, taking her hands. Look at me. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the judge decides, I am not letting Silas Cutter put his hands on you. Do you understand? Clara looked into his eyes and saw something there that made her breath catch. Something that went far beyond obligation or protection. Joe, promise me you won't give up. Promise me you'll fight. I promise. He squeezed her hands once hard, then stood and walked away. Clara sat in the empty room, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Tomorrow. Everything would be decided tomorrow. The hearing was held in the back room of the general store, the only space in Copper Creek large enough to hold a crowd. And there was a crowd. Word had spread, and half the town had turned out to watch. Clara stood beside Joe Ruth on her other side, the twins left at home with Zeke despite their protests. She wore her best dress, still the same pale blue cotton she'd been wearing at the auction, but clean and pressed, and she'd braided her hair the way Emmy liked. If this was going to be her last day as a free woman, she wanted to face it with dignity. Silas Cutter sat across the room, his lawyer beside him, his face arranged in an expression of wounded righteousness that made Clara's stomach turn. He caught her eye and smiled. She looked away. The judge was a heavy man named Morrison, with tired eyes and a reputation for following the letter of the law. He shuffled through papers, frowning at the crowd. This is a civil matter, he said, not a spectacle. Anyone who causes a disruption will be removed. He looked at Silas, then at Joe. Mr. Cutter, you've filed a claim for breach of contract regarding the settlement of one William Whitmore's debts. State your case. Silas's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the facts are simple. William Whitmore owed my client $612 at the time of his death. The auction sale of Miss Whitmore brought only $500. My client is entitled to the remaining balance, and since Miss Whitmore has no means to pay, he requests that she be remanded to his custody to work off the debt. I see. Morrison looked at Joe. And you, Mr. Brennan? Whitfield rose, his voice steady. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan purchased Miss Whitmore in good faith at a public auction. Mr. Cutter was present at that auction and did not raise any objection to the sale. By remaining silent, he effectively waived any claim to additional compensation. I didn't waive anything, Silas cut in. I was outbid. That's different. Mr. Cutter, you'll have your chance to speak. Morrison flipped through more papers. I see here that the original debt was for gambling losses. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And the interest rate was 40%. A murmur went through the crowd. Even in the frontier, 40% was usury. Silas's smile flickered. Standard rates for high-risk lending, Your Honor. I see. Morrison set down the papers. Miss Whitmore approached. Clara's legs felt like water, but she walked forward and stood before the judge. How old are you, Miss Whitmore? 19, Your Honor. And your father, he incurred these debts without your knowledge or consent? Yes, Your Honor. I didn't know how bad things were until after he died. Did you have any say in being put up for auction? No, Your Honor. The bank said it was the only way to settle the estate. Morrison nodded slowly. And your time at Mr. Brennan's ranch, have you been treated well? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Brennan has been nothing but fair and decent. Objection, Silas's lawyer called. Her treatment is irrelevant to the contractual issue. I'll decide what's relevant. Morrison's voice was sharp. Miss Whitmore, one more question. If I rule in Mr. Cutter's favor, what do you believe will happen to you?" Clara glanced at Silas, at his cold smile, at the hunger in his eyes. "I believe I'll be worked to death in his saloon, Your Honor. Or worse." The crowd murmured. Silas's face darkened. "That's slander," his lawyer protested. "It's the truth," Clara said, her voice rising. "Everyone in this room knows what happens to the women who work for Silas Cutter. Everyone knows they go in healthy and come out broken if they come out at all." "Enough." Morrison held up his hand. "I've heard enough." The room went silent. Morrison looked at the papers, at Silas, at Clara, at Joe. His face was unreadable. "The law is clear," he said finally. "A debt is a debt, and the auction did not fully satisfy the amount owed." Clara's heart stopped. "However," Morrison continued, "the law also recognizes the principle of good faith. Mr. Brennan made his purchase believing it to be valid and complete. Mr. Cutter had every opportunity to object at the time and chose not to." He set down his gavel. "I'm ruling in favor of Mr. Brennan. The sale stands. Miss Whitmore is under no obligation to Mr. Cutter." The room exploded. Clara felt her knees buckle, and then Joe's arm was around her, holding her up. People were shouting, cheering. Silas was on his feet, protesting, but none of it mattered. She was free. She was staying. "This isn't over," Silas snarled, pushing through the crowd toward them. "You think you've won Brennan? You've won nothing. That girl is mine, and I'll have her one way or another." Joe stepped in front of Clara, putting himself between her and Silas. "You come near her, you come near my ranch, and I'll put a bullet between your eyes." "That's not a threat. That's a promise." "Threatening a man in front of witnesses." Silas laughed. "Careful, Brennan. Your precious reputation might not survive." "My reputation will survive just fine. Will yours?" Joe stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I know what you did to the Miller girl last spring. I know what happened to the widow Carson's money. I know about the card games you rig and the loans you never intend to be repaid. You want a war, Cutter? I'll give you a war, and I'll make damn sure everyone in this territory knows exactly what kind of snake you are." Silas's face went pale, then red. "You don't know anything." "I know enough. Ruth McAllister's been talking to people, lots of people. Turns out you've made more enemies than friends over the years." Joe smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Walk away, Cutter, while you still can." For a long moment, Silas didn't move. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the hostile faces, the whispered conversations, the way people were looking at him. Then he turned and walked out without another word. Joe let out a breath and turned to Clara. "Are you all right?" "I think so. I think—" Her voice broke. "I think I need to sit down." Ruth appeared at her side. "Come on, girl. Let's get you some air." They pushed through the crowd and out into the street. The cold hit Clara like a slap, and she gasped, filling her lungs with clean winter air. "It's over," Ruth said. "You won." "Did I? You're still here, aren't you?" Clara looked back at the general store, at the people still streaming out, at Joe, standing on the steps watching her. "I'm still here," she whispered. "For now." The ride home was quiet. Joe drove the wagon while Clara sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, still trembling. The sky had gone dark and heavy with clouds, and the wind had picked up, biting through her clothes. "Storm's coming," Joe said. "Yes." "Big one by the look of it." "Yes." He glanced at her. "You want to talk about what happened?" "I don't know what to say." Clara pulled the blanket tighter. "I keep waiting to wake up. To find out it was all a dream." "It wasn't a dream." "How can you be sure?" Joe was quiet for a moment. "Because I've had that dream. After Annabeth died, I used to dream she was still alive. I'd wake up and reach for her and she wouldn't be there." His voice roughened. "Dreams don't feel like this. Dreams don't have consequences." "What are the consequences of today?" "Cutter's not going to give up. He's going to find another way to come at us." "Us." "Us." Joe looked at her. You're part of this family now, Clara, whether you meant to be or not. Clara's heart swelled. I didn't mean to be. I didn't mean any of this. Neither did I. He turned back to the road. But here we are. Here they were. The first snowflakes began to fall. By the time they reached the ranch, the storm had arrived in full force. Wind howled around the house, rattling windows and doors. Snow came down so thick, Clara couldn't see the barn from the porch. The temperature dropped with terrifying speed. Get inside, Joe told her. I need to check on the animals. I'll help. You'll freeze. So will you. He looked at her, something flickering in his eyes. Stubborn woman? Stubborn man. They worked together, securing the barn doors, checking on the horses, making sure the cattle had shelter. By the time they got back to the house, they were both soaked and shaking. The twins met them at the door, their faces white with worry. We thought you weren't coming back, Emmy whispered. We thought the bad man took you. Clara dropped to her knees and pulled them both into her arms. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. Cross your heart. Cross my heart. The children clung to her, and Clara felt tears sliding down her frozen cheeks. These weren't her children. This wasn't her family. But somehow, impossibly, they'd become hers anyway. Joe built up the fire while Clara changed into dry clothes and made hot soup. They ate together at the kitchen table, the storm raging outside, the four of them huddled in a circle of warmth and light. Tell us what happened, Tommy demanded. Tell us everything. So Clara told them. She told them about the hearing, about the judge, about Silas's threats, and Joe's defense. She left out the scary parts, softened the hard edges, but the children weren't fooled. Papa protected you, Emmy said, like he used to protect Mama. Joe went still. That's what papas do, Tommy added matter-of-factly. They protect their family. Miss Clara isn't, Joe started. She's ours, Emmy interrupted. She promised she wouldn't leave. That makes her ours. Clara met Joe's eyes across the table. Something passed between them, something neither of them was ready to name. Time for bed, Joe said roughly. Both of you. But Papa, no arguments. Storm's going to be bad tonight. You need your rest. The twins grumbled but obeyed. Clara followed them upstairs, tucked them in, told them a story about a brave girl who found a home in the mountains. By the time she finished, they were both asleep. She came back downstairs to find Joe standing by the window watching the storm. They love you, he said without turning around. I love them. I know. He was quiet for a moment. Annabeth would have liked you. Ruth said the same thing. Ruth's usually right, much as I hate to admit it. Clara moved to stand beside him. Their shoulders almost touched. Joe, don't. His voice was strained. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Why not? Because I can't. He turned to face her, and she saw the struggle in his eyes. You're 19 years old. You've been through hell. The last thing you need is a broken-down widower with 2 wild children and a ranch that barely makes ends meet. What if that's exactly what I need? Clara. You asked me once what I was scared of. She stepped closer. I told you I was scared of failing, but that wasn't the whole truth. What's the whole truth? I'm scared of losing this. She gestured around them, the house, the warmth, the life they'd built together. I'm scared of losing you. Joe's breath caught. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I've known for weeks. I just didn't have the courage to say it. Clara, I'm 20 years older than you. I don't care. I've got nothing to offer you. You've offered me everything, a home, a family, a chance to be something more than a debt to be settled. She reached up and touched his face, felt the stubble beneath her fingers, the warmth of his skin. I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that whatever happens next, Whatever Silas does, whatever the world throws at us, I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here, with you." Joe closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "I can't lose someone else," he whispered. "I can't survive it again." "Then don't lose me." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple." Clara took his hand and pressed it to her heart. "Feel that. That's my heart beating. It beats for this house, for those children, for you. It's not going to stop just because you're scared." Joe stared at her. She could see the war in his eyes, the fear fighting the hope, the grief fighting the longing. Then slowly, he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Words, feelings. I wasn't good at it even before Annabeth died. You don't have to be good at it. I care about you." The words came out rough, almost painful. "More than I should. More than I meant to. I care about you too. This is a bad idea. Probably. People will talk. Let them." He pulled back and looked at her. Really looked like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said. "I'm not brave. I'm just too stubborn to quit." Joe laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, like he was afraid she might shatter if he held too tight. Clara leaned into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Well," Joe said, "that happened." "It did." "Are you sorry?" "Not even a little." He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter, like the man he must have been before grief carved him hollow. "We should—" He cleared his throat. "We should probably talk about this. Tomorrow." "Clara." "Tomorrow." She took his hand. "Tonight, let's just be grateful we're both alive. Both here. Both—" She searched for the right word. "Both home." Joe squeezed her hand. "Home. Home." They stood together by the window, watching the storm rage outside, their fingers intertwined. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Silas wouldn't give up so easily. The town would gossip. The children would have questions. But tonight, in this moment, none of that mattered. Tonight, they were home. The storm raged for 3 days. They were trapped inside, the snow piling so high it blocked the doors. Joe and Zeke took turns shoveling paths to the barn, coming back blue with cold, their beards crusted with ice. Clara cooked and cleaned and kept the children entertained. She taught Emmy to make bread from scratch, showed Tommy how to whittle a horse from a piece of wood. She told stories until her voice went hoarse, then made up new ones when she ran out of old ones. And every night after the children were asleep, she and Joe sat by the fire and talked. He told her about Annabeth, how they'd met, how they'd married, how she died in his arms with their stillborn son beside her. He told her about the darkness that followed the months when he could barely get out of bed, the way the children's faces were the only thing that kept him going. Clara told him about her mother, dead so long ago she was barely a memory. About her father, the good man he'd been before the drinking took over. About the shame and terror of standing on that auction platform, certain her life was over. "Your life wasn't over," Joe said. "It was just beginning. I know that now. Do you regret it? Coming here?" Clara looked at him in the firelight, at the lines on his face, and the gray in his hair, and the warmth in his eyes. Not for a single second. On the 4th day, the storm broke. The sun came out brilliant and blinding on the fresh snow. The children burst outside like prisoners freed from jail, shrieking and throwing snowballs and making snow angels. Clara watched from the porch, a cup of coffee in her hands, her heart fuller than it had ever been. Joe came to stand beside her. Beautiful, isn't it? Yes. I used to hate the snow. After Annabeth died, it reminded me of the day we buried her. And now, he looked at her, and something soft moved across his face. Now it reminds me of you, of being trapped in a house with a stubborn woman who refused to let me push her away. Someone had to break through that thick skull of yours. I'm glad it was you. He took her hand right there on the porch where anyone could see. Clara's heart skipped. People will talk, she said. Let them. The children. The children already know. They've known for weeks. Joe smiled. Emmy asked me this morning if I was going to marry you. I told her I hadn't asked yet. Clara's breath caught. Yet. He turned to face her fully. I know it's too soon. I know there are 100 reasons why this is a bad idea. But Clara May Whitmore, I have never met anyone like you. You came into my life like a storm, and you turned everything upside down, and I... He stopped, swallowed hard. I love you. God help me. I love you. Clara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, Clara. I love your stubbornness and your courage and the way you refuse to back down from anything. I love the way you sing to my children and the way you make biscuits that don't taste like rocks. I love... She kissed him before he could finish. When they broke apart, two small faces were watching from the doorway. Does this mean you're staying forever? Emmy asked. Clara looked at Joe. He looked at her. Yes, she said. I'm staying forever. The twins erupted into cheers. Joe pulled her close and Clara leaned into him, breathing in the scent of wood smoke and coffee and home. Home. She'd finally found it. 2 weeks of happiness. That's what they got. 2 weeks of stolen glances across the breakfast table, of hands brushing when they passed in the hallway, of quiet conversations by the fire after the children fell asleep. 2 weeks of learning each other's rhythms, each other's silences, each other's hearts. Clara had never known anything could feel this way. This full, this right. You're smiling again, Emmy said one morning. You smile all the time now. Do I? You do. Tommy looked up from his breakfast. Papa smiles too. He never used to smile. Maybe we're both just happy. The twins exchanged one of their looks. Because you love each other? Clara's face went hot. Who told you that? Nobody told us. We figured it out. Emmy rolled her eyes. We're 6, not stupid. Are you going to get married? Tommy asked. Your papa and I haven't talked about that. You should. Then you'd be our real mama. Emmy's voice was matter-of-fact, but there was something fragile underneath it. I mean not our real mama, but our other mama, our new mama. Clara's throat tightened. Would you want that? Yes. Tommy said it immediately without hesitation. We already decided. We had a meeting, Emmy added. Just us two. And we voted. You voted unanimous. Tommy nodded seriously. That means we both said yes. Clara laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. I know what unanimous means. So you'll marry Papa? That's up to your Papa. We'll talk to him. Emmy slid off her chair. Come on, Tommy. We have work to do. They ran off before Clara could stop them, and she heard them thundering up the stairs toward Joe's room. Joe! Emmy's voice carried through the house. We need to talk to you about marrying Miss Clara. Clara buried her face in her hands, mortified and delighted in equal measure. 10 minutes later, Joe came downstairs with a twin attached to each arm. I hear we're getting married, he said. That's what I'm told. News to me. But he was smiling. Did you put them up to this? I absolutely did not. It was our idea? Tommy said proudly. We're very smart. Too smart, Joe muttered. He set them down. Go on, both of you. Go check on the chickens. But Papa, chickens. Now. The twins grumbled, but obeyed, and Joe sat down across from Clara. So, he said. So. Marriage. Apparently. He was quiet for a moment. Is that something you want? Truly want? Clara looked at him. This man who'd bought her at an auction and given her a home, who'd defended her against Silas and held her through storms, who'd opened his heart when he'd sworn he never would again. Yes, she said. It's what I want. Even knowing what you'd be getting, a widower with too much baggage and not enough money, 2 children who'll drive you crazy, a ranch that needs more work than 3 people can handle. Especially knowing all that. Joe let out a breath. I don't have a ring. I can't afford one right now. The hearing cost more than I expected, and the cattle prices. I don't need a ring. Every woman needs a ring. I'm not every woman. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. I don't need jewelry or fancy dresses or any of the things other women want. I just need you. You and those 2 wild children who somehow became mine when I wasn't looking. Joe's grip tightened on her fingers. Clara May Whitmore. Yes? Will you marry me? The words hung in the air between them, simple and enormous. Yes, Clara whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Joe stood and pulled her to her feet and kissed her deep and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. We should tell the children, Clara said. They already know. They're the ones who orchestrated this whole thing. Orchestrated? Emmy used that word. I don't know where she learned it. Clara laughed. She's too smart for her own good. Both of them are. Joe cupped her face in his hands. Just like their new mama. Mama. The word made Clara's heart sore. I'll try to be worthy of it, she said. You already are. The news spread through Copper Creek like wildfire. Ruth was the first to hear, and she showed up at the ranch with a dress wrapped in paper and tears streaming down her face. It was Annabeth's, she said, thrusting the package into Clara's arms. Her wedding dress. I've been keeping it, thinking maybe Emmy would want it someday, but I think... Her voice broke. I think Annabeth would want you to have it. Clara stared at the package. Ruth, I can't. You can, and you will. Ruth wiped her eyes. I was wrong about you, girl. I was so busy protecting my memories of Annabeth that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. You're good for this family. Good for those children. Good for Josiah. She managed a watery smile. Annabeth would have been glad. I truly believe that. Clara set down the package and hugged the older woman. Ruth stiffened at first, then melted into the embrace. Thank you, Clara whispered, for everything. Don't thank me yet. I still expect you to make her apple pie recipe. Every Sunday, no exceptions. Yes, ma'am. But not everyone was happy. 3 days before the wedding, Clara went into town to pick up supplies. She was loading flour into the wagon when a shadow fell across her. Well, well. Silas Cutter's voice made her blood run cold. If it isn't the blushing bride. Clara straightened slowly. Silas stood behind her, flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. Big men with hard faces and hands that had seen violence. Mr. Cutter? Miss Whitmore, or should I say, Mrs. Brennan, is that what you'll be calling yourself now? That's none of your concern. Oh, but it is. Silas stepped closer. See, I lost a lot of face at that hearing. A lot of money, too, paying those lawyers. People are talking, saying Silas Cutter got beat by a rancher and a debtor's daughter. His eyes went cold. I don't like being talked about. Then maybe you should have left us alone. Left you alone. Silas laughed. Sweetheart, I'm just getting started. One of the men grabbed her arm, and Clara yanked away, her heart pounding. Don't touch me. Oh, I'm not going to touch you. Not yet. Silas's smile was a knife. But I wanted you to know something. I wanted you to know that this isn't over. That wedding you're planning, it's not going to happen. One way or another, I'm going to take everything Josiah Brennan has. His land, his children, his reputation." He leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. "And you? Joe will kill you. Joe won't get the chance." Silas stepped back. "Enjoy your last few days of happiness, Miss Whitmore. They're going to be your last." He walked away, his men following, and Clara stood frozen by the wagon, her whole body shaking. She didn't tell Joe. She should have told him. She knew she should have told him. But he was so happy, smiling, more than she'd ever seen him smile, playing with the children, making plans for the future. She couldn't bear to take that away from him. Besides, what could Silas really do? The law had ruled in their favor. The community was on their side. Silas was just a bitter man making empty threats. That's what she told herself. The night before the wedding, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside. Tomorrow, she would become Clara Brennan. Tomorrow, she would have a family, a home, a future. So why did she feel so afraid? A creak on the stairs made her sit up. "Clara." Emmy's small voice came through the door. "Are you awake?" "Come in, sweetheart." Emmy slipped inside, her blonde hair, tangled, her nightgown trailing on the floor. "I can't sleep," she said. "Neither can I." Emmy climbed onto the bed and curled up beside her. "Are you scared?" "A little." "Me too." Emmy was quiet for a moment. "What if something goes wrong?" "What do you mean?" "Mama said she was going to be with us forever. But then she got sick and she died, and she wasn't." Emmy's voice was small. "What if you die too?" Clara pulled her close. "I'm not going to die, Emmy." "You don't know that." "You're right. I don't." Clara kissed the top of her head. "But I promise you this, I'm going to do everything in my power to stay with you. To watch you grow up, to see you become the amazing woman I know you'll be. I can't promise I'll never die, because that's not a promise anyone can keep. But I can promise I'll fight. I'll fight to stay with you and Tommy and your papa for as long as God lets me." Emmy sniffled. "Do you really mean that? Cross my heart. Mama used to say that too." "Then it must be true." Emmy nestled closer. "I'm glad you're going to be our mama." "I'm glad too, sweetheart." They fell asleep like that, curled together, and when Joe came to wake them in the morning, he found them still tangled in each other's arms. "Beautiful," he whispered. "Both of you." Clara opened her eyes and smiled. "Good morning." "Good morning, almost wife." "Good morning, almost husband." Joe leaned down and kissed her forehead. "It's time." The wedding was small, just family really. Ruth and Zeke, a few neighbors, the preacher from the church in town. The twins stood up with them, Emmy holding a bundle of winter flowers, Tommy solemn in his Sunday best. Clara wore Annabeth's dress. It was cream-colored, slightly too big, altered by Ruth's steady hands the night before. It smelled faintly of lavender and memories. Joe wore his only suit, the one he'd worn to Annabeth's funeral. He'd tried to refuse it, said it felt wrong, but Clara had convinced him. "She'd want you to be happy," she'd said. "She'd want you to live." Now they stood before the preacher, hands clasped, hearts full. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Clara barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Joe, at the tears in his eyes, at the smile on his face. This man who'd been broken by grief had chosen to love again, had chosen her. "Do you, Josiah Thomas Brennan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." Joe's voice was steady. "Do you, Clara May Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I now pronounce you man and wife." The preacher smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Joe cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious. The twins cheered. Ruth cried. Zeke nodded his approval, and Clara thought, this is it. This is my life now. This is home. The reception was held at the ranch. Ruth had cooked for 2 days, producing enough food to feed an army. Neighbors had brought pies and cakes and good wishes. Someone had even brought a fiddle, and soon people were dancing in the parlor, laughing and clapping and celebrating. Clara danced with Joe, then with Tommy, then with Zeke. Emmy demanded 3 dances before declaring herself exhausted. Happy? Joe asked, pulling her close as a slow song began. More than I've ever been. Good. He kissed her forehead. I want you to always be this happy. I will be, as long as I have you. You'll always have me. They swayed together, and Clara let herself believe it. Let herself believe that the worst was behind them, that the future stretched out bright and beautiful. She should have known better. The shot came at sunset. One moment they were standing on the porch waving goodbye to the last of the guests. The next, something whistled past Clara's ear and buried itself in the doorframe. Get down! Joe threw her to the ground, covering her body with his. Another shot. Another. Clara heard glass breaking, heard the children screaming inside. Emmy, Tommy! She struggled against Joe's weight. Stay down. The children. Zeke's with them. Joe pulled his pistol from his belt. Stay here. Do not move. He rolled off her and ran crouched low toward the barn. Clara heard more shots, heard a man scream, heard the thunder of hooves. Then silence. She lay on the porch, her wedding dress stained with dirt, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Clara, Joe's voice. Clara, it's safe. Come inside. She stumbled to her feet and through the door. The children were huddled in the corner, with Zeke, their faces white with terror. Mama! Emmy threw herself at Clara. Mama, I was so scared. Mama, it was the first time Emmy had called her that without the miss in front of it. Clara held her tight. I'm here. I'm okay. What happened? Tommy demanded. Who was shooting? Joe came through the back door, his face grim. 3 men. They rode off before I could get a clear shot. Silas? Clara asked. Joe's jaw tightened. I didn't see his face, but who else would it be? Clara's blood went cold. She should have told him. She should have told him about Silas's threat in town. Joe. Her voice shook. I need to tell you something. She told him everything. The encounter in town, the threats, the promise that the wedding wouldn't happen. Joe listened in silence, his face growing darker with every word. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to ruin things. I thought... You thought what? That he was bluffing. Joe's voice rose. Clara, he tried to kill you. On our wedding day. He could have killed the children. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't... He stopped himself, took a breath. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself for not seeing this coming, for not protecting you better. You couldn't have known. I should have known. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her. If anything had happened to you, if anything had happened to those children, nothing happened. We're all safe. This time. Joe pulled back and looked at her. But he's not going to stop Clara. Silas Cutter doesn't give up. He's going to keep coming until he gets what he wants. Then what do? We end it. Joe's voice was cold. Once and for all. Joe rode into town the next morning. Clara begged him not to go. Begged him to let the sheriff handle it, to let the law take its course. The law didn't stop him from shooting at my family, Joe said. The law isn't going to stop him now. Joe, please, if you kill him, they'll hang you. They'll have to catch me first. And then what? I lose you. The children lose their father. Clara grabbed his arm. I didn't survive everything I've survived just to become a widow. Don't you dare make me a widow, Josiah Brennan. Something in his face softened. I'm not planning to kill him. Then what are you planning? I'm planning to make sure he knows that if he comes near my family again, I will destroy him. Not with bullets. With truth. Joe's jaw set. Ruth's been collecting stories for weeks. Everyone Silas has cheated, threatened, ruined. Enough to bury him 10 times over. And if that doesn't work, then I'll handle it another way. Joe. He kissed her hard and fierce and full of promise. I love you. I'll be back before dark. Then he was gone. The hours crawled by. Clara tried to keep busy, cleaned the house, made lunch, played with the children, but her eyes kept drifting to the window, to the road, waiting. He'll come back, Tommy said. I know. He always comes back. I know, sweetheart. But she didn't know. That was the terrible truth. She didn't know anything anymore. Sunset came, then twilight, then darkness. Joe didn't come back. Clara put the children to bed, her hands shaking, her voice steady only through sheer force of will. Where's Papa? Emmy asked. He's still in town. He'll be back soon. Promise. Clara couldn't make that promise. She couldn't make any promises. Go to sleep, sweetheart. Everything will be all right. But everything wasn't all right. Midnight came and went. Clara sat by the window, a rifle across her lap. Joe had taught her to shoot in the weeks after Silas's first threat, and watched the road. Nothing. No hoofbeats. No wagon wheels. Nothing but darkness and silence and fear. 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. 3. At 4 in the morning, Clara heard it. A single horse moving fast. She raised the rifle. The horse burst into view, riderless, its saddle empty. Joe's horse. Clara dropped the rifle and ran. She caught the horse's reins, saw the blood on the saddle, the blood on its flank. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Clara. Zeke's voice came from the bunkhouse. He emerged, pulling on his boots, his face alarmed. What happened? It's Joe's horse. Something's wrong. Something's happened. Zeke looked at the blood, and his face went gray. Stay here. I'll ride back along the road, see if I can find... I'm coming with you. Clara. I'm coming with you. They saddled a fresh horse and rode out together, following the road toward town. Clara's heart pounded with every hoofbeat, her mind racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. They found him 3 miles from the ranch. He was lying in a ditch by the side of the road, his body crumpled, his face covered in blood. For one terrible moment, Clara thought he was dead. Then he groaned. Joe. She threw herself off the horse and ran to him. Joe, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. Clara. I'm here. I'm right here. She cradled his head in her lap, her hands shaking. What happened? Who did this? Cutter. Joe's voice was a rasp. Ambushed me. On the road back. How many? 4, maybe 5. He coughed and blood flecked his lips. Got one of them, maybe 2. Couldn't see. Don't talk. Save your strength. Clara. His hand found hers. If I don't... Don't you dare. Don't you dare say goodbye to me, Josiah Brennan. Not on our wedding night. Not ever. The children. The children need their father. I need my husband. Tears streamed down her face. You promised me. You promised you'd come back. I'm trying. Try harder. He laughed, a broken sound that turned into a cough. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man. She looked up at Zeke. Help me get him on the horse. We need to get him home. They lifted Joe together, got him across the saddle, and rode back to the ranch as fast as they dared. Clara didn't pray. She'd stopped praying when her mother died, when her father drank himself to death, when she stood on that auction platform. But she prayed now. She prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. Ruth came at dawn. She took one look at Joe, unconscious now, his breathing shallow, his face the color of ash, and started issuing orders. Hot water, clean bandages, needle and thread. Move. Clara moved. For the next 6 hours, Ruth worked. She cleaned wounds, stitched gashes, set what might have been a broken rib. Clara assisted, handed her things, held Joe's hand when he thrashed and moaned. The children watched from the doorway, silent and terrified. Is Papa going to die? Emmy whispered. Clara looked at her daughter now in every way that mattered, and chose her words carefully. Your Papa is strong. He's fighting, and we're going to help him fight. How? By being here. By loving him. By not giving up. Tommy took Emmy's hand. We won't give up. I know you won't. At noon, Ruth finally stepped back. I've done what I can, she said, her voice exhausted. The rest is up to him and the Lord. Will he live? Ruth looked at Joe's still form, at the bandages wrapped around his chest, at the bruises blooming on his face. I don't know, she said honestly. The next 24 hours will tell us. Clara sank into the chair beside the bed and took Joe's hand. You hear that? She whispered. 24 hours. You can make it 24 hours. You survived the war. You survived losing Annabeth. You can survive this. Joe didn't respond. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. Clara held his hand and waited. The children came and went. Ruth brought food that Clara couldn't eat. Zeke kept watch outside, his rifle ready. Somewhere out there, Silas Cutter was celebrating, thinking he'd won. But he hadn't won. Not yet. Clara leaned close to Joe's ear. I love you, she said. I love you, and I'm not letting you go. So you fight Josiah Brennan. You fight with everything you have. Because we have a life to live. We have children to raise. We have a future that Silas Cutter doesn't get to take from us. She kissed his forehead. Come back to me. At midnight, Joe's fever spiked. He thrashed and moaned, crying out names: Annabeth, Clara, the children. Clara held him down, sponged his face with cool water, talked to him in a constant stream. I'm here. The children are safe. Everyone's safe. Just hold on. At 3 a.m, the fever broke. Joe's eyes opened clear for the first time since they'd found him. Clara? She burst into tears. You're awake. Did I die? No. You came close, but no. Pity. He tried to smile. I had questions for the Almighty. You can ask him later. Much later. She kissed his hand. How do you feel? Like I got trampled by a herd of cattle. He winced as he tried to sit up. What day is it? The day after our wedding. Hell of a wedding night. It really was. Joe reached up and touched her face. You look terrible. So do you. Fair enough. His expression sobered. Silas. We'll deal with Silas later. Right now you need to rest. I need to rest. Clara's voice was firm. You almost died, Joe. You can be a hero tomorrow. Today you're going to lie in this bed and let me take care of you. Joe looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Stubborn woman? Stubborn man. He closed his eyes, and within minutes he was asleep. Clara sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall, listening to each precious breath. He was alive. They were still together. And Silas Cutter was going to pay for what he'd done. Joe healed slowly. The first week, he couldn't leave the bed. The second week, he could sit up but not stand. By the third week, he was pacing the bedroom like a caged animal, driving Clara half mad with his restlessness. I need to do something, he said for the 100th time. You need to rest. I've been resting for 3 weeks. Silas Cutter is out of there free laughing at us, and I'm lying in bed like an invalid. You were shot, Joe, beaten, left for dead. Clara crossed her arms. You're lucky to be alive. I don't feel lucky. I feel useless. You're not useless. You're recovering. She sat on the edge of the bed. And while you've been recovering, things have been happening. Joe's eyes sharpened. What things? Ruth's been busy. Zeke's been busy. Half the town's been busy. Clara allowed herself a small smile. Silas Cutter made a mistake when he attacked you on your wedding night. People didn't like that. People talked. The Miller family came forward, told the sheriff everything Silas did to their daughter. Then the widow Carson spoke up about her missing money. Then 3 more families. Clara's smile widened. Turns out when you hurt someone, the whole town actually likes people stop being afraid to tell the truth. Joe stared at her. You're telling me? I'm telling you that Silas Cutter was arrested 2 days ago. He's sitting in the territorial jail right now waiting for trial. Why didn't you tell me? Because Ruth made me promise not to. She said you'd try to get out of bed and do something stupid. I would have. I know. That's why I didn't tell you. Joe was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, really laughed for the first time since the attack. You're something else, Clara Brennan. So I've been told. He pulled her close and kissed her hard and fierce and full of relief. It's over, he said. It's really over. It's really over. But it wasn't quite over, not yet. The trial was set for March. Joe was well enough to ride by then, though Clara worried every time he left the ranch. He testified on the second day, describing the ambush in detail, identifying 2 of Silas's men who'd been caught trying to flee the territory. Clara testified on the third day. She wore her best dress, a new one blue, like her eyes that Joe had bought her as a late wedding present. She kept her voice steady as she told the court about the auction, about Silas's threats, about his promise that the wedding wouldn't happen. He said he would take everything. She said, looking directly at Silas across the courtroom. Joe's land, Joe's children, Joe's reputation, and me. Objection, Silas's lawyer called. Hearsay. It's not hearsay if I heard it myself, Clara said. And I heard it, every word. The judge overruled the objection. Silas glared at her with hatred so pure it made her skin crawl. But she didn't look away. She'd spent too long being afraid. She was done being afraid. The verdict came on the 5th day. Guilty, on all counts. Attempted murder, assault, fraud, intimidation. The judge sentenced Silas to 20 years in the territorial prison. 20 years. Clara sat in the courtroom, Joe's hand in hers, and let the tears come. It's over, Joe whispered. For real this time. For real this time. They walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine. The twins were waiting with Ruth and Zeke, their faces anxious until they saw their parents' smiles. Did we win? Emmy demanded. We won, Clara said. Is the bad man going away forever? For a very long time. Tommy nodded solemnly. Good. I hope he never comes back. He won't, Joe said. I promise you that. They went home. Home. The word had never meant so much. Spring came to Montana like a miracle. The snow melted, revealing green grass beneath. Wildflowers bloomed across the hills. The cattle grew fat on fresh grazing, and new calves arrived almost daily. Clara watched the land come alive and felt something shift in her chest. This was her home now, her land, her family. What are you thinking? Joe asked, coming up behind her on the porch. I'm thinking about how different everything is. A year ago, I was standing on an auction platform certain my life was over. And now? Now I have everything I never knew I wanted. Joe wrapped his arms around her. Same. I thought I'd never love anyone again after Annabeth. Thought I didn't have it in me. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without you. Clara leaned back against his chest. The twins asked me something yesterday. What? They asked if they could call me Mama, not Miss Clara, not Clara, just Mama. Joe's arms tightened. What did you say? I said I'd be honored. And are you honored? Clara turned in his arms to face him. I'm more than honored. I'm grateful. Every single day I'm grateful. He kissed her forehead. So am I. Mama, Emmy's voice carried from inside. Tommy took my hairbrush again. Did not, Tommy yelled. Did too, Clara laughed. And that's my cue. Go, I'll start on the fence repairs. Don't overdo it. You're still healing. Yes, ma'am. She kissed him once quickly and went inside to mediate between her children. Her children. It still felt like a miracle every time she thought it. Summer brought changes. Ruth came by less often, but when she did, she stayed longer. She taught Clara how to make Annabeth's apple pie, how to preserve vegetables for winter, how to handle the 100 small crises that came with running a ranch. "You're doing well," Ruth said one afternoon, watching Clara knead bread. "Better than I expected." "Is that a compliment?" "Don't let it go to your head." But Ruth was smiling. Annabeth would be proud of the woman those children are becoming, of the family you've built. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Nonsense. You'd have figured it out. You're too stubborn to fail." Clara laughed. "Joe says the same thing." "Smart man, that husband of yours." Ruth paused. "He's different now, you know. Lighter. The darkness that's been following him since Annabeth died, it's fading." "I noticed." "That's your doing. It's everyone's doing. The children, you, Zeke, the whole community." "Maybe." Ruth patted her hand. "But mostly, you." That night after the children were asleep, Clara found Joe sitting on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Ruth says I'm the reason you're happier," she said, sitting beside him. "Ruth's right. I think you're the reason I'm happier too." Joe smiled that slow smile she loved so much. "Then I'd say we're even. I'd say we're more than even. I'd say we're blessed." "Blessed?" He tested the word. "I haven't thought of myself as blessed in a long time." "Maybe it's time to start." He took her hand. "Maybe it is." They sat together in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the night, the cattle lowing, the wind in the grass, the distant howl of a wolf. "Clara." "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up. On me, on the children, on this family." His voice roughened. "I know I wasn't easy to love. I know I pushed you away, put up walls, made everything harder than it needed to be. You were grieving. That's not an excuse. No, but it's an explanation, and I understood." Clara squeezed his hand. "I was grieving too, Joe, in my own way. We healed each other." "I suppose we did. That's what families do." Joe was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I never told you what Annabeth said to me before she died." Clara's breath caught. "You don't have to. I want to." He took a breath. She knew she wasn't going to make it. The fever was too high and the baby was already gone. She made me promise, made me swear on everything I held sacred, that I wouldn't close myself off, that I'd let myself love again. Joe, I broke that promise. For 2 years, I broke it every single day. I told myself I was protecting myself, protecting the children, but I was just scared. He turned to look at her. Then you came along, and you were so stubborn, so fierce, so determined to stay no matter what I threw at you. And I realized I couldn't keep that promise to Annabeth by hiding from love. I could only keep it by letting love in. Clara's eyes were wet. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you. She would have looked at you and known immediately that you were the one. The one. The one who would save us, me and the children, the one who would make us whole again. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. I didn't save you, Joe. You saved yourselves. I just loved you. That's all. That's everything. Joe kissed the top of her head. That's absolutely everything. Autumn arrived with a surprise. Clara had been feeling strange for weeks, tired, nauseous, sensitive to smells. She'd blamed the changing season, the extra work of harvest time, the lingering exhaustion from everything they'd been through. Ruth knew better. When was your last monthly? She asked one afternoon, watching Clara turn green at the smell of cooking meat. I don't. Clara stopped, counted backwards, stopped again. Oh. Oh, indeed. Ruth's face broke into a smile. How long? 2 months. Maybe 3. Well, Ruth set down her knitting. Looks like your family's about to get bigger. Clara pressed her hand to her stomach. A baby. Joe's baby. Their baby. I need to tell Joe. You need to sit down before you fall down. You look like you've seen a ghost. Clara sank into a chair. I never thought, I hoped, but you didn't dare believe it. Ruth nodded. That's natural after everything you've been through. But believe it now, girl. There's a new life growing inside you, and that's nothing short of a miracle. A miracle? Yes, that's exactly what it was. Clara told Joe that night. She'd planned to do it gently, ease into it, prepare him for the news. Instead, the moment he walked through the door, she blurted it out. I'm pregnant. Joe froze. What? Pregnant, with a baby. Your baby. Our baby. He stared at her for a long moment. Then his face crumpled, and Clara realized he was crying. Joe. She went to him, touched his face. Joe, what's wrong? Aren't you happy? Happy. He laughed through his tears. Clara, I'm terrified and overwhelmed. And yes, happy. So happy I don't know what to do with myself. Terrified. Annabeth died in childbirth, the baby too. His voice broke. I can't if something happened to you. Nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. No, I don't. Clara cupped his face in her hands. But I know that Ruth delivered half the babies in this territory. I know that I'm young and healthy and strong. And I know that whatever happens, we'll face it together. Together. That's how we do things now. Remember? Joe pulled her close, holding her like she was made of glass. I remember. Good. She kissed his cheek. Now let's go tell the children. They're going to want to name it. Both of them. Both of them. Emmy's been asking for a sister, and Tommy's been asking for a brother. What if it's one of each? Clara laughed. Then I suppose we'll just have to have twins. God help us all. They found the children in the parlor, arguing over a game of checkers. We have news, Clara said. The twins looked up immediately. What kind of news? Emmy asked suspiciously. Good news or bad news? Good news. The best news. Clara looked at Joe and he nodded. You're going to have a baby brother or sister. Silence. Then Emmy shrieked so loud the windows rattled. A baby? A real baby. I want a sister. I'm going to teach her everything. I want a brother, Tommy said, but he was grinning. Brothers are better. You don't know that, Emmy argued. I know everything. You do not. Both of you. Joe held up his hands. We don't get to choose. We get what God gives us, and we're grateful for it. When? Emmy demanded. When is the baby coming? Spring, Clara said. Around April or May. That's forever away. It'll go faster than you think. Emmy threw herself at Clara, hugging her tight. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. We're going to be a real family now. We're already a real family, sweetheart. I know. But now we'll be an even bigger family. Emmy pulled back, her eyes shining. Mama. Yes. I love you. Clara's heart swelled. I love you too, Emmy. I love all of you. Tommy came and hugged her too, more reserved than his sister, but no less sincere. You're a good mama, he said quietly. I'm glad you're ours. Clara held her children, and felt something settle into place. Something that had been broken for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to be whole. This was it. This was everything. This was home. Winter came again. But this winter was different. This winter, Clara wasn't alone. She had a husband who loved her children, who called her mama a baby growing inside her, and a community that had welcomed her as one of their own. Christmas Eve, they gathered around the fire. Ruth was there, and Zeke and a few neighbors who'd become friends. The twins performed a play they'd written themselves, something about a princess who saved a kingdom by being stubborn, which made everyone laugh and look at Clara. "I don't know what you're implying," she said primly, which made them laugh harder. After the guests left and the children were asleep, Clara and Joe sat together by the fire. Her belly was round now, impossible to hide, and Joe had taken to resting his hand on it whenever they were close. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about last Christmas. I spent it alone in my father's house trying to figure out how I was going to survive. And now I'm trying to figure out how I got so lucky." Joe kissed her temple. "Luck had nothing to do with it. You worked for this, Clara. You fought for it. So did you. So did we." He paused. "I've been thinking about names. For the baby. For the baby." He was quiet for a moment. "If it's a girl, I thought maybe Annabeth, for her middle name. So she'd always know she had two mothers who loved her." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I think that's perfect. And if it's a boy, William." Clara's voice caught. "After my father. The man he was before the drinking, before everything fell apart. I want our son to carry the name of the good man he used to be. William Brennan." Joe nodded. "I like it. Annabeth Brennan if it's a girl, William Brennan if it's a boy. Either way they'll be loved. Either way, they'll be ours." The fire crackled. Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the world in white. "Clara." "Yes. I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "What?" "I need to tell you that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. That every day I wake up grateful that I was at that auction, that I had the money to bid, that I was stubborn enough to keep bidding, even when Silas tried to drive the price up." He turned to face her fully. "I need to tell you that you saved me. That you saved my children. That you turned this house back into a home." "Joe, let me finish." He took her hands. "I spent 2 years after Annabeth died thinking I would never be happy again. Thinking I didn't deserve to be happy again. And then you came along and you were so fierce and so brave and so determined to love us, whether we wanted to be loved or not." He laughed a wet sound. "And now here we are. Married. Expecting a baby. Surrounded by family and friends. Happy." "Happy," Clara repeated. "Happy." He kissed her hands. "I never thought I'd say that word again. But I'm saying it now, and I mean it. I am happy, Clara Brennan. Happier than I have any right to be. And it's because of you." Clara leaned forward and kissed him soft and slow and full of promise. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. Merry Christmas, Joe. Merry Christmas, Clara." They held each other as the fire burned low and the snow kept falling, two people who had found their way through darkness into light. Spring came early that year. The baby came with it. It was a hard labor, 12 hours of pain and fear and gripping Joe's hand until her knuckles turned white. Ruth was there, calm and capable, talking Clara through every contraction. "You're doing fine," Ruth said. "Just keep breathing." "I can't." "You can. You're the strongest woman I know. You can do this." Joe pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm here. I'm right here. Don't leave. Never." At dawn, with the first rays of sunlight streaming through the window, the baby arrived. A girl red-faced and squalling with a shock of dark hair like her father's. "She's perfect," Ruth said, placing the baby in Clara's arms. "Absolutely perfect." Clara looked down at her daughter, and felt love so overwhelming it stole her breath. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, Annabeth." Joe was crying. He didn't try to hide it. "She looks like you," he said. "She looks like all of us." The twins burst through the door, unable to wait any longer. "Is it a sister?" Emmy demanded. "Please tell me it's a sister." "It's a sister," Clara said. Emmy shrieked with joy. Tommy tried to look disappointed but couldn't quite manage it. "What's her name?" he asked. Annabeth, after your mother." The twins went very still. Emmy's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" Emmy climbed onto the bed and looked at her baby sister. "Hi, Annabeth. I'm Emmy. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything." "Not everything," Tommy said, climbing up on the other side. "I'm going to teach her important stuff, like fishing and shooting. She doesn't need to know how to shoot. Everyone needs to know how to shoot." "Children," Joe's voice was gentle, "let your mama rest. You'll have plenty of time to fight over who teaches her what." The twins grumbled but obeyed, pressing kisses to the baby's head before letting Ruth usher them out. Joe sat on the edge of the bed, looking at his wife and his newborn daughter. "We did it," he said. "We did it. She's beautiful. She is." He leaned down and kissed Clara, soft and reverent. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what? For everything. For staying. For fighting. For loving us." He touched the baby's cheek. "For giving me this. You gave me this too, Joe. All of it. The home, the family, the life I never dared to dream about." "Then I'd say we're even. More than even." Clara smiled, exhaustion and joy mixing on her face. "I'd say we're blessed." "Blessed," Joe repeated. "Yes, that's exactly what we are." 1 year later, Clara stood on the porch of her home and watched her family. Joe was in the yard teaching Tommy how to rope. Emmy was on the grass making daisy chains with baby Annabeth in her lap. Ruth sat in the rocking chair knitting something tiny and pink. Zeke leaned against the fence offering advice that no one asked for, but everyone appreciated. The ranch had grown in the past year. More cattle, more horses, more hands to work the land. The house had grown too, an addition for the new baby, another for the room they were already planning to need, because Clara was pregnant again. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Joe. She was saving it for tonight when the children were asleep and the house was quiet. But for now, she just wanted to watch, to remember this moment, this perfect moment, when everything she'd ever wanted was right in front of her. "You look happy," Ruth said. "I am happy." "Good." Ruth's needles clicked steadily. "You deserve it." "Do I?" "More than anyone I know." Ruth looked up. "You came here with nothing, Clara. Less than nothing. A debt and a bad name and a world that wanted to chew you up and spit you out. And look at you now." Clara looked at herself, at the wedding ring on her finger, the house behind her, the family in front of her. "I got lucky," she said. "Luck's got nothing to do with it. You made this, every piece of it, through stubbornness and grit and a refusal to give up. I had help. Everyone has help. The question is what you do with it." Ruth set down her knitting. "You built something beautiful here, Clara Brennan. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." Joe looked up from his roping lesson and caught Clara's eye. He smiled, that slow smile that still made her heart skip. She smiled back. "I won't," she said. "I promise I won't." That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Clara told Joe about the new baby. He cried again. He seemed to do that a lot these days. "Another one," he said, shaking his head in wonder. "Another one. Boy or girl? We won't know until spring. I don't care either way, as long as it's healthy, as long as you're healthy." "I will be." Clara took his hands. "We will be." Joe pulled her close. "I love you, Clara Brennan." "I love you too, Josiah Brennan." "Thank you for choosing me." "I didn't choose you." Clara smiled against his chest. "You bought me at an auction, remember? Best purchase I ever made. Better than the cattle, much better than the cattle." She laughed, and he laughed with her, and the sound filled the house with warmth. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, eternal and unchanging. The cattle lowed in the pastures. The wind whispered through the grass. And inside, in a house that had once been empty and sad, a family slept peacefully secure in the knowledge that they were loved. Clara stayed awake a little longer, listening to Joe's breathing, feeling the new life growing inside her. She thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, standing on an auction platform, terrified and alone, certain that her life was over. She thought about the woman she was now, a wife, a mother, the heart of a family she'd never expected to have. She thought about all the moments in between, the fear and the hope, the grief and the joy, the moments when she'd wanted to give up, and the moments when she'd found the strength to keep going. And she realized something. She wasn't the girl on the auction platform anymore. She wasn't the debtor's daughter, the housekeeper, the woman who'd been bought for $500. She was Clara Brennan, wife of Josiah, mother of Emmy, Tommy, Annabeth, and one more on the way, builder of homes and healer of hearts. She was loved. She was home. And that was everything. Clara closed her eyes and let sleep take her, a smile on her lips and peace in her heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new memories to make. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she was exactly where she was meant to be, in the arms of the man she loved, surrounded by the family she'd found, living the life she'd built from nothing but courage and stubborn, relentless hope. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. It was hers.